My name is Emma, and I am 26 years old. This is my story of betrayal, heartbreak, and survival. It all began with a trust I thought was unbreakable, a family bond I believed would never shatter. But I was wrong. I never thought it would come to this, not in a million years. My family, the people I trusted most, had been everything to me. But now, everything was shattered. I could barely remember the last time I'd felt this heartbroken. The living room was silent, too quiet for comfort. My father stood there, his eyes avoiding mine, his face twisted with guilt, as if he was the one who'd been wronged. But the truth was, I was the one who'd been betrayed, and I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or collapse from the weight of it all. "Why?" I finally managed to choke out. My voice felt like it belonged to someone else, someone weak and vulnerable. I wasn't used to sounding like that. I wasn't used to feeling like this. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," my brother Mark said, his tone dismissive as though he were scolding a child. He wouldn't even look at me. "You wouldn't understand." "Understand what? That you've been lying to me?" My voice cracked, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Mark's eyes flickered to the floor. I could see his guilt, but there was something else there too, a coldness that had never been there before. "It's complicated, okay? I didn't want to hurt you." I felt my pulse quicken, my hands trembling. I had always thought we were close. But this felt like a knife to the chest. "Then why didn't you trust me?" I asked, barely able to speak the words. The betrayal was raw, bleeding through every word that came out of my mouth. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't think you'd understand," he said, his voice more matter-of-fact than remorseful. I took a step back, the room closing in on me. My thoughts spun, and everything that had once felt secure was now uncertain. My brother, my flesh and blood, had hidden something from me. Something that had torn our family apart. "Are you serious right now?" I asked, trying to steady my breathing. "All these years, I thought we were a team. I thought we were family. But you've been keeping secrets from me? For how long?" Mark stayed silent, his eyes darting around like he was looking for an escape. He wasn't going to answer me. He wasn't going to apologize. I turned to my father, hoping for some kind of comfort, some kind of explanation. But his face was hard, like stone. "Dad, say something. This is our family. Our lives are falling apart. Don't you care?" He didn't even flinch. "It's not that simple, kid," he muttered. "There's more to it than you think." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake them both and make them see the hurt they had caused. But all I could do was stand there, my fists clenched at my sides, my heart beating in my ears. Mark turned away, as if he couldn't bear to look at me anymore. "I didn't want you involved," he muttered, barely audible. I swallowed hard, trying to push down the anger bubbling inside me. "Involved in what? What the hell is going on?" Mark glanced back at me, eyes flashing with something I couldn't quite place. Defiance? Fear? "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it's too late now." Too late. I couldn't get those words out of my head. Too late. It wasn't just a phrase. It was a death sentence for my trust, for everything I thought was real. I stepped toward the door, needing air. I need to figure this out. I need answers. My voice was a whisper, filled with a quiet, burning rage. I knew, deep down, that I couldn't let this go. Not like this. I wasn't just going to let them tear apart everything I cared about and pretend nothing happened. I wasn't weak. I wasn't going to stand by and let them destroy me. "I'll find out why," I said quietly, but with more conviction than I'd ever felt. "I'll find out what you've been hiding, Mark." The door slammed behind me, and as I stood outside, the weight of it all settled over me. The world had changed in an instant. My family was no longer what it seemed. I wasn't sure where this path would lead, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to stop until I had answers. My hands shook as I slammed the door behind me, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. But I didn't feel anything. It was as if I were moving through someone else's life, watching it all unfold from a distance. I didn't even know how to start processing what had just happened. The betrayal was too much to wrap my mind around. I hadn't expected it. I don't think anyone would have. But now, all I could do was walk aimlessly through the house, trying to find some kind of solace in the walls that used to feel like home. "Emma, are you okay?" My mom's voice floated in from the living room. She sounded concerned, but I couldn't even look at her. Not now. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not when I still felt like everything was slipping out of my grasp. How could they do this to me? How could Mark, my own brother, keep this from me for so long? I thought we were close, thought I was someone he could trust. But I was wrong. The silence was deafening, and I felt myself sinking deeper into it. I walked past my mom without saying a word, heading straight for my bedroom. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it, my chest tight with emotions I couldn't express. It was easier to just be angry. I sat on my bed, my thoughts racing. I thought I knew everything about my family. But now, I wasn't so sure. Every conversation, every moment we had shared, felt like a lie. What had he been hiding all these years? What else didn't I know? Suddenly, the knock at my door broke through the storm in my head. I didn't bother getting up. "Emma?" It was my mom again. "Can we talk?" I wanted to tell her to go away, but I didn't. I was too tired to argue, too tired to pretend everything was fine. "Yeah, come in," I mumbled, barely lifting my head. She walked in slowly, sitting beside me on the bed. Her eyes were full of concern, but I didn't want comfort right now. Not from her. Not from anyone. "I don't understand why he did it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't he trust me? She didn't answer at first, and I could feel the weight of her silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. "I'm sure he didn't want to hurt you. Sometimes we make mistakes, Emma." "Sometimes?" I snapped, finally looking up at her. "This isn't a mistake, Mom. This is a betrayal." She flinched, but I didn't care. I was angry, and I didn't know where else to put it. "Why didn't you tell me, too?" I asked, my voice shaky now. "Why didn't you warn me that something was wrong?" "I didn't know," she said, her voice low. "I didn't want to believe it either." I shook my head, the anger boiling over. I wanted to lash out, but I had nowhere to direct it. No one to blame except for the person who had done this to me. "Then what's the point of all of this?" I asked, my voice rising. What was it all for? Why did Mark lie to me? Why did he let me walk around thinking everything was normal, when none of it was? Mom didn't have an answer, and that hurt more than anything. I wanted her to tell me it would be okay, that things would go back to how they were before, but she couldn't. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room. My heart was pounding, my chest tight with frustration. I can't do this. I can't just pretend like nothing happened. "Emma," my mom said, her voice barely above a whisper, "you need to understand. Sometimes people do things they regret. Mark, I don't care about Mark," I cut her off, my hands clenched into fists. "I care about me, Mom. I care about what's been taken from me." I grabbed my phone almost instinctively. I had to do something. I had to get answers. But as I scrolled through my messages, something caught my eye. An unread text from Mark. My heart skipped a beat as I clicked it open. "I'm sorry. I know you won't understand, but this wasn't personal. It was something I had to do. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just those words. The text made my stomach turn, but something about it didn't sit right. It wasn't enough. Mark was hiding something bigger than what he'd told me. I dropped my phone onto the bed, my mind racing. I knew then, whatever this was, I wasn't going to let it go. I needed to find out the truth. I wasn't going to let this go unanswered. I'll get to the bottom of this, I whispered to myself, feeling a surge of determination. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about understanding, about finding the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I couldn't just sit around anymore. After what happened, I had to know the truth. I couldn't live with the uncertainty eating at me. Why had Mark betrayed me? Why had he done this to our family? I grabbed my phone and stared at the screen, the image of Mark's last text still haunting me. This wasn't personal. It was something I had to do. But what? What was so important that he had to drag me into this mess? I needed answers. Mom, we need to talk, I called out, my voice shaking with frustration. Now! She appeared in the doorway, looking tired, as if she hadn't slept much. Emma, I don't think this is the right time. Don't tell me when the right time is, I snapped, pacing across the room. I need to know what's going on with Mark. Why didn't you tell me something was wrong? She hesitated before sitting down on the edge of my bed. I didn't know, Emma. I didn't think he would. What? Betray me? I almost spat the words. The anger bubbled up again. I trusted him, Mom. I trusted him more than anyone. I know, sweetheart, but no. I cut her off, holding up my hand. I need more than just I didn't. No! I need to understand why he did this. What was so big that he couldn't tell me? Mom didn't have an answer. She just looked at me with sad eyes. I couldn't stand it anymore. I needed to do this myself. I needed to confront Mark. Without waiting for her response, I stormed out of the room and grabbed my jacket, heading straight for Mark's. He wasn't there when I arrived, but his car was parked outside. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Emma? His voice was quiet, unsure. When he opened the door, I didn't wait for an invitation. I pushed past him, feeling the tension between us. Why did you do it? I demanded. Why did you betray me? He looked at me like I was a stranger, then glanced away, avoiding my gaze. I didn't want to hurt you, he mumbled. You didn't want to hurt me? I repeated, my voice rising. Then why did you keep this secret from me? Why did you let me walk around thinking everything was normal? He rubbed the back of his neck, his face tense with guilt. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I thought if I kept you out of it, it would be easier. For both of us. For both of us? I felt the anger surge again. You kept me in the dark for your sake, not mine. He remained silent, his eyes downcast. You're not answering my question, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. What was so important that you couldn't trust me? What happened? Mark sighed deeply. I never meant for this to go as far as it did. He reached for something in his pocket, then pulled out a crumpled letter. He handed it to me, avoiding my eyes. I unfolded it, my hands trembling. The letter was from a lawyer. It was official, and it mentioned something about a business deal Mark had been involved in. But that wasn't what caught my attention. What really stood out were the names at the bottom of the letter. 2 names I recognized. Dad's business. Partners. Why didn't you tell me about this? I asked, feeling my stomach drop. Why didn't you tell me what was really going on? Mark turned away, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't want you involved. I didn't want to drag you into it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You kept me in the dark because you thought I couldn't handle the truth? My voice cracked. You didn't trust me, Mark. You never trusted me. He didn't respond. I stepped back, holding the letter tightly in my hand. I wasn't any closer to understanding why this had happened. I had the names, I had the letter, but it wasn't enough. It didn't explain what Mark's involvement was or what he had hoped to gain from it. I turned to leave, but before I could reach the door, Mark called out to me. Emma, I spun around to face him. What, Mark? I asked, my voice breaking. What else do you have to say? You've said enough. He opened his mouth but closed it again, unsure of what to say. I saw the guilt in his eyes, but it wasn't enough to undo what he'd done. I need to figure this out on my own, I said quietly, more to myself than to him. But don't think this is over. I walked out, feeling like I was getting closer to something, but still so far from understanding everything. Mark's silence was deafening. The more I found out, the more I needed to know. I wasn't going to stop until I had the whole picture. I hadn't expected it to hurt this much. Every step I took toward the truth felt like walking through fire. But the answers I found only made it worse. I couldn't stop thinking about that letter Mark had given me. It didn't add up. I could sense there was more, something I wasn't seeing yet. So, I went back to Dad's office, hoping I could find something to explain the rest of Mark's involvement, something that could make sense of this twisted mess. I opened the drawer where Dad kept his important papers. There, under a stack of financial reports, was another folder I hadn't noticed before. My hand trembled as I pulled it out, my heart pounding in my chest. I opened it, and the first page nearly made me choke. It was a contract, signed by both Mark and Dad's business, partners. It wasn't just about business, it was about betrayal. I read the first few lines, my eyes widening in disbelief. This agreement acknowledges the transfer of family assets under a separate account, to be kept confidential from other family members. I slammed the folder shut, unable to process what I had just read. I had to see Mark. Now. I had to confront him, get the truth straight from his mouth. When I arrived at his place, I didn't wait for him to open the door. I barged in, feeling like a stranger in my own skin. I couldn't hold the anger in anymore. I needed answers. Mark, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady but full of fury. He looked up from his desk, his eyes widening at the sight of me. Emma, what are you— No more lies. My voice was sharp. I know about the agreement, Mark. I know what you've done. He froze, his face paling. What? How? You really thought I wouldn't find out? You thought I wouldn't notice the changes in Dad's finances? The contract you signed with his partners? I was practically shaking with rage now, my hands clenched into fists. You've been planning this behind my back all along, haven't you? Mark shifted uncomfortably, looking anywhere but at me. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never wanted you involved in this. You didn't want me involved? I repeated, my voice rising with every word. Then why did you keep it from me? Why didn't you tell me the truth? You've been lying to me for months, Mark, and I trusted you. He opened his mouth to speak, but hesitated. I didn't think you could handle it. You wouldn't understand why I had to do it this way. It was for the family. For the family? I felt like I was suffocating. The lies, the manipulation. It was all too much. You destroyed this family. You've been playing everyone, including Dad. All for what? Money? Power? He looked away again, his hands running through his hair. I had no choice, Emma. You don't understand the pressure I was under. They were threatening me. I didn't have a choice. They? I narrowed my eyes, suspicion creeping into my thoughts. Who else is involved in this, Mark? What else are you hiding? I can't, he stammered, his words trailing off. But there was something in his eyes now. Fear? Regret? Maybe both. Tell me the truth, I shouted, stepping closer. Who else is involved in this betrayal? Who are you working with? Mark swallowed hard. Dad's partners. They've been using me to cover up their own mistakes. They promised me something in return. But I didn't know how deep it would go. I stared at him, struggling to keep my composure. You betrayed me. Us. All for them. I could barely choke out the words. Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't want it to end like this. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was sorry. Sorry he got caught. But that didn't change what he'd done. It didn't erase the damage. You don't get to apologize now, Mark. I turned away, my heart heavy with bitterness. You made your choice, and now I have to make mine. Mark stepped forward, reaching out as if to stop me. Emma, please don't do something you'll regret. Please. I stopped at the door, my hand on the knob. I turned back to look at him one last time. You made your choice, I said, my voice colder than I intended. Now I'm making mine. I slammed the door behind me, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just about revenge. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let Mark get away with this. I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I kept thinking about Mark, about what he had done, about what I could do. I had never felt so torn in my life. I dragged myself out of bed and sat by the window, staring out at the city below. The sun had barely started to rise, but I wasn't sure I wanted to see the day. I wasn't sure I wanted to face what was coming. Had one question in my mind. What now? I could forgive him. I could let it go, tell myself that he was just scared or misguided, that it was all a mistake. I could try to fix things, heal the wound, and pretend everything was okay. But could I ever really forget what he'd done? Could I ever forget that betrayal? The thought of forgiving him felt like I was letting him off the hook. Like I was letting him continue to manipulate me. And that wasn't who I was. I wasn't going to be a victim. I had worked too hard to get where I was, to let someone tear it all down. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the messages Mark had sent. I didn't mean for this to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you. It was always the same excuse, the same empty words. He didn't want to hurt me? Well, he sure as hell did. I thought back to the letter, the one that made everything clear. The business deal with Dad's partners, the secret accounts, the lies. Mark wasn't just trying to protect me. He was protecting himself, protecting his future. I wasn't part of his plan, and that hurt more than anything. I stared at my phone, my hand shaking. How could he have done this to me? How could he have lied for so long and then thought a simple apology would fix everything? I can't forgive you, I whispered to myself, though it felt like I was trying to convince myself more than anything. I can't. I couldn't let him get away with it. I couldn't let him destroy everything we had for his own gain. Not when I had given him my trust, my loyalty. It wasn't just about family anymore. It was about justice, about doing what was right. But what was right? What was justice in this situation? I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, stepping out into the cold morning air. I needed space, needed to think. The city felt empty in the early hours, like everyone else was still asleep, leaving me to my thoughts. I walked for what felt like hours, just trying to figure out what to do. The only thing that was clear was that something needed to change. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't walk away and pretend everything was fine. Not after what he did. When I finally returned home, the decision felt heavier than ever. I had thought it through. I had weighed the options. And I knew deep down that forgiveness wasn't an option anymore. The damage was done. The trust was gone. I wasn't going to be weak. I wasn't going to let him win. I'm going to make him pay, I muttered to myself, my voice steady. The words felt cold, but they were the only ones that made sense now. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about making sure this never happened again. To me, or to anyone else. I wasn't the same person I was before this. And that was the hardest part to accept. But I had no choice. I made my decision. I woke up with one thought on my mind. It was time. Time to finally make Mark pay for everything he had done. I had spent the past few days thinking, planning, and gathering what I needed. I wasn't just going to let this go. I needed to take control. The letter had given me enough to start with: Mark's involvement with Dad's business partners and the secret accounts. It was clear now. It wasn't just about me or our family. It was about money, power, and greed. And I wasn't going to let him walk away from it. I grabbed my phone and called Liam. He'd always been one of the few people I could trust, someone who had seen me through thick and thin. We weren't as close as we used to be, but I knew I needed him now more than ever. "Liam," I said when he answered, "I need your help." "Emma? What's going on?" His voice sounded a little worried, but I could tell he was listening closely. "I've got a situation," I began, my words sharp. "It's about Mark, and it's bigger than what I thought." "Tell me everything," he said. I could hear the urgency in his tone, and I knew he was in it for the long haul. So I did. I told him everything: the betrayal, the letter, the business deal, the lies. By the time I finished, Liam was silent for a moment, processing it all. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "This is a lot." "I don't have a choice," I said, my voice growing firmer. "He's been manipulating me and the family for months. I can't just sit back and do nothing." "I'll help you," Liam said without hesitation. "We'll make sure he gets what he deserves." The relief I felt when he agreed to help was overwhelming. It was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't enough. I needed more than just Liam. I needed a plan that would catch Mark off guard and force him to face the consequences of his actions. I called a few more people: old friends, allies I had kept in touch with over the years, people who knew the ins and outs of business deals, who could help me dig deeper into the mess Mark had created. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined. By the time the afternoon rolled around, I had a team. A small one, but one that could help me get to the heart of this betrayal. I sat at the kitchen table, papers scattered around me, contracts, letters, and notes I had collected over the past few days. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't out of fear. It was out of adrenaline, the kind that surged when I knew I was on the right path. I stared at the documents in front of me, focusing on the details. This wasn't just about Mark anymore. It was about taking down the system he had built with Dad's partners, exposing the truth for what it was. And I was going to make sure they paid for it. Liam came over that evening, and we went over the plan together. "So, what's the next step?" he asked, leaning forward with interest. "We hit them where it hurts," I said, my voice steady. "I'm going to confront Mark and make him realize he's not in control anymore, but I'm not going in alone." "Good," Liam said, nodding. "You're smarter than that." I felt a strange sense of empowerment as I looked at the plan unfolding in front of me. I wasn't just some victim anymore. I was the one who had the power now. But even with that power, I couldn't help but feel a nagging sense of doubt. What if I was doing the wrong thing? What if revenge wasn't the answer? I shook the thought away. I couldn't think like that. Not now. The next few days were a blur. We worked in the shadows, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. I spoke to more people who had been involved with Dad's partners, getting names, gathering information, building my case. With every conversation, I felt more sure of myself. This was the right thing to do. But as we moved closer to executing the plan, something unexpected happened. I received a text from Mark. Just one line. "I know what you're planning, Emma. Don't do it." My heart stopped for a second. How did he know? I looked at the message over and over again, the words burning in my mind. He was trying to manipulate me again, wasn't he? Trying to make me second-guess myself. But I couldn't back down now. I was too far in. I deleted the message, a sense of determination growing in my chest. He wasn't going to stop me. Not this time. I stood in front of Mark's office, my heart pounding with anticipation. This was it, the moment I had been planning for. I had waited long enough, and now everything was in place. I could feel the power shift inside me. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Taking control of my life again. Mark had spent so long pulling the strings, thinking he could control everything. But today, I was the one in control. I knocked on his door. When he opened it, the look on his face was exactly what I had expected. Surprised, confused, but somehow also guilty. He didn't know what hit him. "What do you want?" Mark asked, his voice shaky. He knew something was wrong. He must have known. "I think it's time we talked," I said, stepping inside without waiting for him to invite me in. I saw the tension in his posture, but I didn't care anymore. I had worked too hard for this. "I've got everything I need, Mark," I continued, my voice steady now. "The truth about the business deal, the accounts, the lies, it's all here." I held up a folder, and I could see the color drain from his face as he looked at the papers inside. "You can't do this," Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know everything. You don't understand." "I don't need to understand anything more from you," I interrupted, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You've lied to me long enough. You thought you could manipulate me, but you're the one who's been played." Mark's eyes shifted to the floor, avoiding my gaze. I could feel his guilt hanging in the air. It was almost like I could see the weight of his regret crushing him. But it didn't make me feel sorry for him. Not anymore. "You don't get to make excuses," I said, stepping closer. "Not anymore. You've hurt me. You've hurt the family. And now it's time for you to face the consequences." Mark was silent for a long moment, but when he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, more broken. "I didn't want to hurt you, Emma. I didn't want any of this to happen." "Too late for apologies, don't you think?" I said coldly. "You had your chance, and you threw it away." I could see the struggle in his face. He was regretting everything now. He had no idea how to fix it, how to make up for what he'd done. And it was too late for him to try. But as I stood there, something shifted inside me. For a moment, I felt a twinge of doubt. Was I doing the right thing? Was this really the answer? I pushed the thought away. He had made his choice, and now I was making mine. "You want to know what happens now?" I asked, my voice low. "You lose. I've got everything. The power's in my hands now." Mark looked up at me, his face etched with desperation. "Please, Emma, don't do this. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to get this far." I stared at him, weighing his words. For a moment, I thought about everything that had led me here. The lies, the betrayal, the way he had hurt me. Could I really let him off the hook with a simple apology? But the scars were still too fresh. The anger was still too raw. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Mark," I said, shaking my head. "Not anymore." His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw him as vulnerable. For the first time, he wasn't the one holding the power. He was the one begging for mercy. "I've already made my decision," I said, my voice firm. "There's no going back from this." I walked toward the door, leaving him standing there, defeated. But as I reached for the handle, he called out to me. "Emma," he said, his voice strained. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this Please, just don't do this. I hesitated for a moment, my hand on the door. I could feel the weight of his words, but deep down, I knew I couldn't let him off the hook. Not this time. I opened the door and stepped out, closing it behind me. I didn't look back. I had won. But the victory didn't feel as sweet as I thought it would. I sat there in the quiet, the weight of everything that had happened pressing on my chest. I wasn't sure how I got here. I hadn't expected to end up this way, so conflicted, so torn. I had spent so much time planning, plotting, and seeking justice. But now, as I stood on the edge of what I was about to do, I felt empty. The anger was still there, bubbling just beneath the surface, but it was no longer the driving force. No, now there was something else. Something more powerful. Something deeper. I could feel it in my chest, a kind of calm that had settled there, uninvited. Mark's apology echoed in my mind. I couldn't escape it. I'm sorry, Emma. I never meant for it to go this far. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to remind him of everything he had done, the lies, the manipulation. But something inside me stopped me. I had already made my point. I had already taken control of the situation. But what now? What was the right thing to do? The truth was, I wasn't sure if there was a right answer. Revenge had been my answer for so long. It had fueled me, kept me going when everything felt too much to handle. But now, standing here, I realized that revenge wouldn't fix the hole in my heart. It wouldn't heal the wounds he had caused. I thought about everything that had happened, about all the choices I had made. I had been so sure of myself in the beginning, so convinced that revenge would give me peace. But now I understood. Peace wasn't something someone else could give me. It was something I had to find on my own. The phone call I had made to Liam, the confrontations with Mark, everything. It had all led me here. To this moment, this crossroads. Could I forgive him? Could I truly find it in myself to let go of everything and move forward? I had to ask myself, what did I want? Was I really ready to forgive him? Or had everything he had done to me already left a scar too deep to heal? The sound of the doorbell brought me back to the present. I knew who it was before I even looked out the window. Mark. He was here, standing at my door, the man who had destroyed everything I thought I knew about. Trust! I hesitated for a moment before opening the door. When I saw him standing there, I felt the old anger stirring inside me. But it was different this time. It wasn't the sharp, burning rage it had once been. It was more like a dull ache, something that had settled into my bones, heavy and cold. Emma, he said softly, looking at me with those eyes, the ones that had once made me feel safe, the ones that had lied to me for so long. I'm sorry, for everything. I know I've hurt you, and I know I can't fix it, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I stared at him for a long time, the words sinking into me, but they didn't have the effect I expected. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anger. I just felt numb. Maybe that was the worst part of it all. You've hurt me more than you can imagine, Mark, I said, my voice steady, even though I felt like I was crumbling inside. You destroyed the trust I had in you, in us. And I don't know if I can ever get that back. I understand, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I need you to know that I never wanted this to happen. I thought I could fix things before you found out, but I was wrong. I've been a fool, Emma. The words hung in the air, but they didn't change anything. He was still Mark, the man who had betrayed me, and no amount of apologies could erase that. But something shifted inside me, something that had been buried under all the pain and the anger. I had a choice now. I could stay angry. I could keep holding on to the bitterness, to the hurt, or I could let go. Not for him, but for me, for my own peace. Because the truth was, the longer I held on to the anger, the longer I let it control me, the harder it would be to heal. I took a deep breath, looking at him, really looking at him for the first time in so long. I don't know if I can forgive you right now, Mark, but I'm done being angry. I'm done letting this define me. I've moved on. I've grown. His eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw the man beneath the mistakes. He was broken, just like me. Maybe that's why I could finally see the truth. We were both just trying to make sense of everything, but it was too late for us to go back. I need to let go, I said, my voice quiet but firm. For me. Mark didn't speak. He just nodded, his face full of regret, and for once I felt like I had the power. I wasn't the one who had been destroyed. I had survived. And that was enough. I'm not holding on to this anymore, I said softly. It's over. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, lighter than I had ever felt before. I wasn't going to let the past control me anymore. I had taken back my life. If you've felt the power of this journey, the weight of betrayal, and the strength in finding your own redemption, don't forget to like and subscribe. This story is far from over, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Join me as we continue to uncover what lies ahead.